So today we are here today at the conference and later at the award. We will meet a lot of amazing people, organisations and enterprises are doing amazing work. They have the courage, innovation, determination to really challenge the norm.
Just a few opening words, and then it gives us an enormous pleasure to be sponsoring this conference. I just thought I'd open up by telling you who we are, and that's not a cheap plug, that's just so that you understand where we fit in the ecosystem and why we sponsor events such as this. Australian Ethical is a retail superannuation investment company. We call ourselves we're part of the mainstream, but we're at the enlightened part of the mainstream, is what we like to say. We don't sit on the fringe. We like to think that we're 20 years ahead of the rest of the system. We're all about sort of proving that there's a better way to use capital.
I also shared the fact there that I spent a lot of time out in remote communities, and it was some of the experiences out there that helped steer and shape my thinking, which has kind of landed me here today. Another topic of discussion, I spoke at the AAMI conference about delivering what was needed. Now, there's a fair bit of crossover between how I got started and delivering what was needed, and one is basically being a building block for the other. And delivering what was needed then is very relevant now, which is needed honesty, integrity, persistence, diversity, reliability. And delivering what was needed included new housing, maintenance, construction, all really important things. But after years of working out in the remote regions, I got a better understanding of what is actually needed above and beyond that. And what is that? Actually, a thing I heard early on was stories. So I'll tell a few more stories and get to the what, the how, and probably more importantly, the why. And I was fortunate to sit and share stories about completing maintenance out in remote communities earlier on this year at the Parliament Energy Storage Parliament Summit, something like that. And I was asked to address energy independence in remote communities. And so I spoke about the fact that in urban areas, energy is obviously an everyday part of our life, and powering our homes for heating, cooling, charging our phones, and in some cases even charging our cars. And it's an expected luxury, and so it should be. We live in a first world country here. The reality is, though, that the large majority of us depend on energy companies or a provider for clean water, electricity, and communications.
I think something that our union has seen happen in some of our major industries that we look after, which are logistics, food manufacturing, and call centres, is the huge explosion of insecure work in Australia, which will not be a surprise to anyone in this room. And we've been doing a lot of work over the last 5 years to kind of educate and make people understand the nature and the extent of the shift in what type of work people are doing.
Good morning, everyone. So as Melanie kindly introduced me, I work at KPMG, and I primarily work in the corporate citizenship team. So some of you may ask, what does corporate citizenship mean? We are pretty much like an in-house sustainability or a CSR function that you would normally find in a corporate, except we exist in a professional services firm. I guess being good corporate citizens, it is in our enlightened self-interest to proactively contribute towards making this world a better place. We can be successful if we operate in a world that is healthy, happy, sustainable, and where everyone has an equal opportunity to thrive and prosper.
Go back to my hub. It's called the Thrive Hub, and we look at the thriveability of people and ecosystems in the built environment. Being able to thrive is about feeling that you can be the best that you can be, that you are valued and that you're able to follow your dreams. Thrive isn't about eradicating poverty, but what it is about highlighting that people that are undereducated, who can't read, who don't have access to books, who are undernourished, who are unwell, can't be part of that story, can't be the best who they can be, they can't follow their dreams.
Connectivity for me need to be two things. To put in the shoes of the other is the first thing. You need to understand that no, you're right. It's the right. We can build our own right together. Sometimes the solutions are not in our minds. As a leader, the solutions people have their own solutions. The thing is give the opportunity to develop the solutions. It's about empathy, and it's about partnerships. The big corporations with the small startups, the different cultures, the different kind of businesses. It's about the multidisciplinary professions that we are. It's not focused in one area, and it's not focused in the people who are thinking in do good. It's around everyone.
But you also, the reason there's so much poverty is that we were spending too much on our lattes. Did you see that report in the paper? And avocados, and I also saw the one about, so too much avocado smash and latte. If we can just put the memo around, we will be looking for something to do. Look, I think I probably need to wrap up, but in terms of, I think they're a very inspirational foundation for the day ahead from each of our speakers, each working in different environments yet achieving so much. And certainly from Youth Project's point of view around homelessness and substance misuse, mental health, youth unemployment, everything I heard here makes perfect sense to me around knowing that we're not alone, that there's others joining in, and whether it's what you can do right here, right now, with what you have, or whether it's large scale, like what you're doing at KPMG, or Dominic, the legacy, the spread of your work at the university, and George, the NUW doing some really, really hard yards against powerful forces that would have you believe that we need to lower wages, when I see every day people who are homeless living on the streets. They're living in car parks in the city, in furniture lock-up, in shipping containers, or just in an alcove.
I guess it's my passion to try and make things simple, and at the moment it is not simple. I think things do exist. You've heard like all these amazing stories today, and I kind of feel a little bit humbled sitting here as just a lawyer. But I guess there is. I mean, what I'm trying to create the change for is to have the possibility of a third sector, something that sits in the middle. It's for purpose, but it also has, as part of its DNA, the idea that you have a purpose, you have a mission, and that can never ever be rocked or taken away. It doesn't matter what the money is, what the offer is on the table. That's part of your foundation and sits there from day one to the end of your days.
So I think that we're starting to think more about purpose, what we want to achieve in the world with business. That's becoming a normal conversation. And I suppose the piece that I'm really interested in is the ownership disruption piece. So not only thinking more about purpose and social enterprise and that kind of movement, but figuring out how people can be more involved in the enterprises that they create. So things like broad-based ownership, employee ownership, cooperatives. It was great to hear so much. I mean, cooperatives are so much part of the fair trade story, and there's a real renaissance happening at the moment. And if we're talking about ownership disruption, there's a big campaign. It's just kicked off by a guy named Nathan Schneider in the States. Let's buy Twitter. Twitter's going to go up for sale. What if all of the people, I love Twitter, I'm always on Twitter, what if we all owned a little bit of Twitter? And that kind of ownership disruption, where we own these huge platforms, and some of the wealth that's created comes back to communities and people, and that we start to have a say about these very large global businesses, then I think we're starting to talk about democracy in a real sense. So those are the sorts of things that really excite me.
Business can actually be a force for good. It can drive us towards a more innovative, sustainable and fair future economy. And like if we take the consumer angle, what I'm particularly interested in is, I think consumer choice is an amazing tool for the initial stages of this, and Fair Trade, who are one of our members, have been amazing in unlocking huge amounts of consumer demand and demonstrating that the business case is there. You can have a business that's ethical and sustainable as well as profitable. But I really see that as the first step, and I think the future and the notes I got, or the prompting I got given was, what's going to happen in 10 years? And I think the future we really need to be working towards is how do we get to a point where consumers don't have to choose? Like, I really reject this assertion that consumers have to choose an ethical product. I think we should be taking consumer choice out of it. You should be expecting an ethical product. And what that really brings us to is the rules of the game and why we're here. So our founding members include the likes of Australian Ethical, Phil's in the audience, other companies like Intrepid Travel, Bank Australia, a lot of these companies that are at the forefront of our more ethical, fair, sustainable business movement. And what we're really doing is bringing a powerful, united voice, because one of the challenges out there is that the rules of the game don't incentivise these types of business. They incentivise, pretty down and dirty, make profit above all else types of business. You can basically compare it to what AFL was like, 30, 40 years ago. It was a blood sport, it was a free-for-all, and it really incentivised players who are big and burly and, pretty happy to hit someone. But that didn't make a good game, and the AFL has gradually introduced rules that have shifted the way the game's played, and so it's now a less bloody, more interesting, more skillful sport. And I see a strong analogy between that and what we're seeing in the business community at the moment. At the moment we have, the rules encourage that, big and brutal, make your profit at whatever cost. And that comes at the expense of the better business players, those that are pushing this more sustainable, ethical model. And what we're really doing is saying we need to change the rules, we need to incentivise these better types of business.
Billions in terms of revenue and capital available to them. So I think small ethical businesses and consumers can do a lot to to help those larger organisations innovate and actually look at the way they do business so that they can actually generate social and environmental and economic outcomes that are actually going to help address some of those problems. And it's good for business as well. I gave a small example of Coles previously, but when Paul Polman talks about Unilever and why they do the things they do, it's helping the organisation, it's helping them and their profits as well.
And at the moment we're actually looking for investment, and we've got a few things happening which are super exciting. Actually, interestingly enough, we were approached by a traditional investor a couple of months ago, but we decided to part ways with them, even though they were very keen, because we just didn't feel like the values were aligned. And it was a really hard decision to make, because there is some dollars and cents you have to make as well. You want to set the baby free, so to speak, but at the same time you want to make sure that you find a home for it, and the right home for the business. So yeah, I do agree with you, Elaine. There should be some more easily accessible opportunities for businesses like us to be able to get funding, because it really is the future. Ethical business is the future.
How do you suss out someone like the investor that wanted to throw billions of dollars at mighty big undies?
They found us, weirdly enough. So
yeah.
We weren't even quite ready for it, but it just kind of came in a very odd kind of way. But they approached us.
So so they approached you, but you decided they weren't a good fit. How do you go about, do you get a private investigator? How do you know?
To be honest, it's such a gut feel, and everyone I've spoken to has said, it is like getting married or going on a date. If you really don't feel right about it, it probably isn't. So in the end of the day, you can sit and talk about it and go through all the spreadsheets and everything, but at the end of the day, I think it really does need to come back down to a good fit in your heart and gut.
Last year, for example, we were reviewing our charity partners, and we actually had a conversation with World Vision, and they wanted a whole process for us to go through. So there's definitely potential, and I think, sorry? Yeah, I think that can be a lesson a little bit, and also I think just in terms of I think there just should be a fostering spirit of this whole collaboration, because you've got too many people doing the same thing. You've got two companies doing the exact same thing, both putting in 250 grand in the marketing to try and achieve the same goal. Why not bring that together? Harness the database of both companies and smash it. I love what YGAP are doing. We're actually partnered with them in Africa, and they're all about this. They partner with these local entrepreneurs in Africa and other parts of the world, and just empower and enable them to do what they're doing. So at the end of the day, I think one thing I'm realizing as well is, we need to start moving away from our name on something and just be thinking about the impact of a place. I know there's a story, I won't mention names, but we went to Cambodia and there's all these little developments, and they've got smack bang the person's name, the charity's name. It doesn't really matter about the name. It just matters that there's impact and people in that community are being, So, and I think when that idea and thought is actually out there, people will realize, okay, well, let's come together then, because it's not about us. It's about the people that we're trying to serve.
We're going to get into understanding what has come behind that and what's led to the coffee that's in the cup there, and what it's doing downstream with the coffee farmers that grow the coffee, and upstream in terms of the Indigenous communities and Indigenous projects that it's supporting. We have sort of three architects of that here to tell us that story. I'm going to ask them some questions to, I guess, give us all that information, and then I'd love to take some questions from you towards the end. What we were showing before, if you happen to be sitting here during the break, is some video of what Red Dust Coffee is enabling with the Red Dust Healers, and we actually have Kathleen from the Red Dust Healers, one of our Red Dust Healers, to provide a bit of an insight right at the end of our session today, just as we wrap up.
Can we just add that while we were doing the work in Western Australia, we also brought over a team from the Eastern Seaboard that delivered a program called Red Dust Healing. The man is extremely empowering. His name's Tom Powell, and Tom's been working with us in developing a respect program, which is open to all people who want to be part of the academy or academy programs. It's our prerequisite before we actually bring you on board, is that you go through this program, which is an immersion. And we also have developed a train the trainer with Tom, and all of our wheelchair basketball team have gone through that, as well as they've all become leaders in this model.
I had no idea what this was all about. I had no idea about what I was getting myself involved in. I have to say, it actually took 2 years to finally unravel what Jasper Coffee could do, indeed, to help support whatever this program was that I didn't understand. So my first introduction with these two ambassadors here was to try and understand why the hell they'd come in the first place. What's coffee got to do with communities out in the outback? Is this about, what, are we setting up a distributorship here? Do they drink a lot of coffee? Are we talking about we're going to grow coffee? Do I have to become an agronomist and get some reporting happening? What do I have to do? They're going to set up a lot of cafes, so we have to go and train them as baristas. I don't know how we are involved in any of this, tell me. And so it was very confusing to try and unravel what is the connection with coffee and these amazing programs that I kept hearing about. And so I got to the point of realising that the only thing that started to connect was the way in which fair trade cooperatives had come out of their dark space and developed programs through their communities.
For that contact with children and young people on the ground, and not just young people, but people of all ages with disability and without, struggling with their mental health. When this team comes to town, it has a huge impact. They leave a huge impact behind, and there's a leveler there, you know, in terms of the trauma, perhaps, and sharing a story, and having a go as our patrons, is having a go at life. And they're whatever life throws at you, have a go, you know, which is what the healers embody out there for those young people, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal athletes. So it's a powerful thing. So I think the consumer, I know I do, I'm always looking, you know, where's this going, who are they? And if I can choose that one that's going somewhere, I think that's fantastic, you know, that's great. Evidently I'm in the demographic, mid-50s, with a little bit of income, making more and more of those choices when I'm going to buy. And I think that's what we're seeing with consumer. The more we can get the story out, the story is what they want to hear.
That, you know, that's our adversity, but everyone's got something. And that's sort of what we end on. And there's a quote from, it was a 10-year-old girl up in Port Hedland, but we were asking them what they learnt from that day and spending time with us. They also jump in wheelchairs and play basketball with us, and that's the leveler that Claire was talking about, that equaliser, because everyone's on an even playing field. No one's left on the sideline. Everyone ends up in a chair, even the kids that don't normally like sport. They love playing wheelchair basketball and trying other Paralympic sports too. But at the end of the day, she said, I learnt that you can turn your disabilities into abilities. This is from a 10-year-old girl. Yeah, it gets me a bit emotional to think about, because it's not, for her, I think she was thinking, she was looking at us, and she started seeing us just as people, and people that were achieving great things.
I'm beginning to feel at the words at the beginning of today about all the good stuff's being talked about, but we'll give it a crack. You might be able to tell by Jimmy and I's beards and skinny chinos, we're creative. Probably didn't get the memo. Probably the least important, most important thing there is on today's program. And as was mentioned before, my name's Adam. I look after strategy at Goza Creative Studio. This fine man to my left is Jimmy. He founded our ethical enterprise in 2006 and is co-owner and creative director with Luke, who is in Abbotsford somewhere doing all the work today. So it's such an honour, and we have these existential crises when we come and talk to folks like your good selves, because to be among such purposeful people, making great deeds, and in pursuit of such big ideas, to create such a profound difference for so many, can sort of leave a service provider a little bit like us wondering, what's our spot in this ecosystem? So I want to thank Moral Fairground for the opportunity to talk a little bit about today, about some of the challenges of motivating consumers to make ethically conscious decisions and doing good by doing business development-driven marketing and communications.
Balance between looking ethical and looking credible, sure well. So that was something that came up. We spent most of our time talking about how do you measure success. So how do you actually know? And in terms of, there are some business metrics in terms of the social enterprise being able to make enough and get along, but there are also some challenges around measuring the broader social impact and how that feeds into the whole thing. So we spent a bit of time on that. And just cost of website and not having enough resources.
Two teams will present their arguments, drawing on personal/professional learning, research field examples, and their natural wit.
Diaspora communities are often entrepreneurs, and they are great at spreading information and, most importantly, nurturing newly arrived people from their community's origins. And I want you to not take my word for it. We're very lucky today to be joined to witness for ourselves Lily. Now Lily migrated to Australia about a month ago, and she's really feeling like a turtle out of water. And she's meeting Harley for the first time. Now it may not look like it, but Harley and Lily come from the same country originally, but Harley's been here for a long time. Welcome, welcome. So glad you made it here safely. Oh, thank you, thank you. So hard to come here, so long, and oh, so hard. Thank you for helping me. I don't know what accent that is, but... No worries, mate. I don't know what that one is. No worries, mate. We'll take care of you. You'll be an Aussie in no time. Aussie? What's this Aussie? So you want to be here? Nah, what am I talking about? You want a job? Yeah? You got a house? You got a car? Oh, I live with my cousin and her husband. They're here 10 years. I need job, you know, I need to look after my family and buy food. Yeah, your cousin Hilda, yeah, she's a good friend of mine. Don't worry, when I came to Australia 40 years ago, I had nothing at all. No money, I had nothing. You'll be right. Lucky for you, I now own a beautiful chain of very successful bakeries.
Examples of ethical businesses and characters that will bring us back home with the inconvenient truth. We all dream of heroes that will fix all contemporary issues that threaten our and future generations' existence. We all dream of a day when climate change, biodiversity threats, natural resources depletion, wars and human rights abuse are not pressing issues anymore. To begin with, none of these issues are easy to solve, especially poverty. Very complex. Poverty has for decades been at the core of global agendas and looks nowhere near being solved. In a similar line, inequality has rose together with poverty and raises every day more and more.
Winston Churchill once said that democracy wasn't a very good form of government, but it's better than anything else on offer. You ever notice the way these sayings are always either Churchill or Einstein? It probably wasn't Albert Einstein, it was probably Elsa Einstein. Anyway, likewise with ethical enterprises, somehow changing the world and ending poverty, oh, I don't know, but without it? All right, you can start relaxing a bit now. I've got 3 contentions here. First one, I think one of the great tragedies of capitalism is that ethics doesn't necessarily come into the equation with business. As Tony Soprano would say, as he was talking to a colleague in concrete boots on the edge of the boat, don't take it personally, it's only business. And a great sage once said to me, to get to the top in business, you have to trample on someone. Was my dad, and he did work in government for 40 years, but still. So, not everyone that works in business is personally unethical. I understand that. But business with a single bottom line of capital gain is intrinsically unethical, because the end justifies the means.
Who are these people? Well, apparently they're young and they're risk-taking and they're committed to changing the world for the better. And they give each other TED Talks like, see the problem, tackle the problem, do something, anything, whatever. So, yeah, I'm looking around. Maybe youth is self-defined. But this factor causes me some concern. Relying on people I could have given birth to transform the world, well, what, in between multi-slacking on various screens and ordering their food by Uber while taking the best selfie possible and simultaneously texting somebody, and all this to a backtrack of some funky version of a previously great song. Are they going to make it all better? Back in my day, had to walk to the fish and chip shop, talk to a few people on the way. Musicians could play instruments, but I digress. Okay. The good old days, the simpler times. You either cared about people or you cared about money. And you chose your side, you stayed on your side, until you burnt out, and then you probably went to the other side. However, who thinks you should be able to make money while caring about the world?
They aren't responsible, which not only disproves our non-hypothesis, but also brings us to the sad realisation that the negative is true. Ethical enterprises can't change the world. But more than that, maybe it gives insight into what can. Pauline would not be in Parliament if people had ethical belief against racism, and Andrew and Rupert would be pulling pints at the local if people just chose to switch off. We wouldn't need enterprises to help those that struggle to help themselves if communities were strong and actually cared about other people. We wouldn't need sweatshops, waste diversion and recycling enterprises if people pulled back on a never-ending quest for more, newer and better stuff. No, ethical enterprises can't change the world. Only ethical people and ethical societies can really do that.
So my conclusion, and our conclusion on behalf of our team, is that labels don't matter. Intentions and actions ultimately do. Yay! Social enterprise is a mindset. It's expansive and it goes beyond me being okay. Mindset drives behaviour, doesn't it, Harley? So we say that social enterprise can transform communities. The mindset on display from women like my grandmother Daphne Brown was to give what she could to others. And this is the basis of social enterprise. Even with distortions, transformations of communities is inevitable. And I have to finish with a joke since it's a light-hearted debate. How many social enterprises does it take to change a light bulb? None. We don't change light bulbs, we change the world.
Yay!